Now that Corvid has been out there for at least 2 years, you will find many resources showing you how to do many wonderful things on Corvid. Wix has an API documentation page that has pieces of example codes that anybody can copy and paste and create their own login. But for those that are brand new to coding, it may be a little bit difficult to customize it even further, which is why you see the basic login tutorial videos on YouTube. There are actually 2 very popular requests that I receive all the time regarding custom login. One of those is, how do I check if the user already exists to prevent them from registering again? And how do I check that they filled in all of the fields before the form is submitted? I'm Code Queen Ayeli, and I'm going to show you how to make this totally codable. First, let's start off by showing you the existing Wix login. It's simple, it's clean, it's definitely mobile friendly and responsive, and it has the ability to log in through social media accounts. You will quickly find out that it is not customizable, meaning you cannot add your own logo or any other type of custom design. If I were to click sign up right now and attempt to use my existing email account, Wix automatically gives a message saying there's already an account that exists with this email address. If you're an advanced coder and want to skip this video tutorial, or if you want to follow along and create your own custom registration with the same code that I'm using, view the video description below, click on the link that'll take you to my tutorial page so you can copy and paste the code from there. Once you have the code, you can jump into the editor with me. In the editor, you can see that I've already created my custom form and I've configured each one. I'm going to go over the configuration with you. Make sure that your developer tools are on. And if you right-click on one of the elements, you can open up the properties panel. From here, we're going to double check the names on each element so that way it matches our code. For the first one, I labeled it first name. For the second element, I've labeled it last name. For the third element, I've labeled it email. And the last one is password. I went ahead and labeled the button as well. And I did not turn on any of the events in the properties panel. We're going to be using only code to trigger the registration. I've labeled this button registration button. Make sure that each field is configured correctly through the settings. Make sure that any text is set to text, or email is set to email, or password. Also, make sure to mark each element as required. This will help us with the validation code. Let me show you a preview of what that would look like. If I were to skip that one, a red box appears. Well, you can design this to look like whatever you want. Just make sure to hit the design icon, customize design, and under the drop-down select error so you can begin customizing your error design. Make sure to include 2 error text messages. I've added one at the bottom and I've labeled that error message. And I've added another one called email exists. This error will only show up if we receive an error during registration because the email already exists on our database. And this one will show up if one of these is invalid. The forgot password is optional. Some people like to have it on the registration page or on the login page. And I've added a few extra elements on the bottom just for design purposes. If you already have the code, you can click open the code page area and paste it here. Because I was testing this page in preview mode, I turned off one line of my code so that way it didn't auto redirect me somewhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on that code right now. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see my code better. At the top of our page, we see all the import lines. If you are using the forgot password, you can leave this code up at the top. Make sure to change any IDs to match the actual IDs on your page. Remember that the forgot password will only work if the person is not logged in. So I've actually added an extra line of code, which is right underneath the forgot password. If the person is currently logged in, then I'm just going to redirect them to a different page. You can change the end of this URL to whatever page you'd like. After that, I've actually added a code for the password. The password input is the very last input on my form. Usually a person tends to hit the enter button on the keyboard when they want to submit a form once they've filled in all of the inputs and they're on the very last input. That is why I only triggered this code on this password. If you want to trigger it for the other user inputs, all you have to do is copy and paste and change the ID name. What this code is saying for the password is on key press for the password user input, we will immediately hide any error messages that are being displayed on the page. And if the key equals enter, then I will take all of the fields and check to see if they're valid. So I have 4 fields in my form, so I have added 4 fields on this line. Email, password, first name, and last name. At the end I've put .valid because I'm checking to see if they're valid. This piece of code is checking the validation settings that you have added here under the settings icon. Under the general settings, I've only marked it as required. So this is the only thing it's checking for. If there is nothing in this user input element, then it'll flag it as missing. If they are all valid, then I'm going to take each value and I'm going to attempt to register the person. Upon successful registration, I'm going to redirect the person to a different page, or else I'm going to catch the error and I'm going to display the email exists because that should be the only error on this page since I've already checked if the inputs are valid. On this if statement, if you follow it down here, if they are not valid, then my second error message is going to show up. So make sure you put the correct error message on the correct line of code. The catch error should be connected to the email error message, and the else error should be connected to the regular error message. Let's move on to the rest of the code. For the registration button, as soon as the button is clicked, I also want to hide both error messages. The reason I'm doing that is because I want them to know that the button was clicked. We're attempting to register them once again, and only if something fails, I want to display those error messages. So in the top part, I am again checking that each of the 4 user input elements are valid. If they are not, then I'm going to display the error message underneath the user input elements. If they are valid, then I'm going to trigger a function. This function I called register person, and it's found at the bottom. What this function is doing is getting all of the values from each of the 4 user input elements. It's taking the correct information, email, password, first and last name, and is again attempting to register the person. If the registration is successful, then it's going to redirect them to this page. Or else it's going to catch the error and then it's going to display the error message underneath the email user input element. That's it for the code. So now let's test it out. I'm back on Totally Codable, but I'm actually going to go straight to the registration page and attempt to register here. So Candy shop, candy at shop.com, and let's do password 123456789. I hit enter, it registered successfully. I am now logged in. There it is, Candy shop, down at the bottom, candy at shop.com. Now let's log out. And let's go back to the registration. Now that I'm back on the registration page, I'm going to attempt to register that same email address again. Shopcandy at candyshop.com. That email already exists. Let's do Candy Shop 2. And now it's successfully registered. Voila. Now you have a customized code that will allow you to check to see if a user already exists, and it will allow you to make sure that all the user input elements were filled out correctly. If you still need help to implement your code, make sure to visit our Facebook group to post your questions and screenshots of your code so the community can guide you to find your answers. If you don't use Facebook, then visit Totally Codable and click on the community link, and you will be directed to a closed community website where you can also post your questions and screenshots of your pages and code. Thanks for watching and thank you for subscribing. I'm Code Queen Ayeli, and this was another Totally Codable moment.